The air in Spain was different. It was heavy, silent, and cold, thick with the ghosts of etiquette and empire. For the 16-year-old Princess Maria Antonia, arriving from the sun-drenched, boisterous court of Naples in 1802, it felt like stepping into a magnificent tomb. She was a Bourbon like them, but of a different sort. Her mother was the formidable Maria Carolina of Austria, sister to Marie Antoinette, and she had raised her daughter to be a player in the great game of Europe. Maria Antonia was sharp, well-read, and possessed a wit that flashed like a stiletto. She had been sent to Spain to be a princess, to secure an alliance, and to produce an heir. She arrived intending to be a queen. What she found was a court rotting from the head down. The king, Charles IV, was a kind bumbling fool obsessed with hunting and clockmaking, utterly blind to the affairs of his own kingdom. The real power was his wife, Queen Maria Louisa of Parma, a woman whose vanity was matched only by her ferocious grip on authority. And coiled around that authority, like a serpent, was the Prime Minister Manuel Godoy. He was the Queen's lover, the Prince of the Peace, a man of low birth who had risen to become the absolute master of Spain. He was charming, decadent, and universally despised. And then there was her husband, Ferdinand, the Prince of Asturias. He was not the dashing prince of her girlhood dreams. He was pale, heavy-set, with a perpetually sullen expression and the resentful eyes of a perpetual subordinate. He was 18, yet he was treated like a child, deliberately excluded from all matters of state by his mother and Godoy, who saw him as a rival to be contained. In their first weeks together, Maria Antonia felt a profound disappointment. Ferdinand was ill-educated, suspicious, and possessed a coarse humor. But beneath his sullen exterior, she sensed something else, a deep, simmering well of hatred for Godoy and his mother. And in that hatred, the politically astute princess saw an opportunity. She would not be a decorative, powerless princess like those before her. She would not wither in this cold, formal court. If her husband would not be a king, she would teach him how to be one. Maria Antonia began her campaign subtly. She engaged Ferdinand in conversations about politics, history, and philosophy, subjects his tutors had neglected. She brought him books from her own library. She praised his intelligence and stoked the embers of his resentment into a focused flame. "You are the heir to the Spanish throne," she would tell him, her voice a low, urgent whisper in the vast cold halls of the Palace of Aranjuez. "This kingdom is your birthright, not the plaything of a palace guard." Ferdinand, who had never known such intellectual or emotional validation, was captivated. For the first time, someone of intelligence and spirit was on his side. This vibrant Neapolitan princess was not just his wife. She was his ally, his mentor in the art of conspiracy. Soon, their private chambers became the heart of a shadow court. Disgruntled nobles, clergymen who despised Godoy's worldliness, and military officers who felt their honor had been stained by the Prime Minister's policies all began to gravitate towards the young couple. They became known as the Partido Fernandista, and Maria Antonia was its undisputed nerve center. She did not hide her contempt. In public, her wit, once a charming tool of diplomacy, became a weapon. She openly mocked Godoy's pretensions and made sharp, cutting remarks about her mother-in-law's special relationship with the Prime Minister. The court, a place of whispered insinuation, was shocked by her audacity. The Neapolitan flame was becoming a political firebrand. Queen Maria Louisa, who had expected a docile, childlike daughter-in-law, was enraged. She saw Maria Antonia not as family, but as a rival for her son's affection and a direct threat to her power and the position of her lover. Godoy, for his part, recognized an existential threat. This intelligent, politically active princess was uniting his enemies and giving them a royal figurehead. The battle lines were drawn. The queen and her lover began their counterattack. They started by trying to isolate Maria Antonia, surrounding her with spies and restricting her correspondence with her mother in Naples. Then, they began to work on their most important asset, the weak, suspicious mind of Ferdinand himself. They whispered that his clever wife was dominating him, that she was using him for her own family's ambitions, that her sharp tongue was making a fool of him at court. Maria Antonia had come to Spain to be a queen, but she had become a conspirator. And in the court of Charles IV, conspirators did not live long. The poison was beginning to circulate. The court of Spain, once merely cold, became a place of active menace. Maria Antonia felt the change in every sideways glance, every feigned courtesy from a courtier. The air grew thin. Her ladies-in-waiting were replaced by women loyal to Queen Maria Louisa, their eyes and ears extensions of her mother-in-law's will. Letters from her formidable mother in Naples arrived weeks late, their seals broken and clumsily resealed. Ferdinand, her husband and co-conspirator, began to buckle. The constant whispers of his mother and the subtle pressures from Godoy found purchase in the soft soil of his insecurity. One day, he would be the passionate revolutionary she was molding. The next, he would be sullen and withdrawn, muttering her own arguments back at her as accusations. "They say you push me too hard," he would complain. "They say your Neapolitan fire will burn us both." Maria Antonia fought back with the only weapons she had, her intellect and her will. She doubled her efforts, trying to shore up Ferdinand's resolve, reminding him of their shared purpose. She organized secret meetings with their supporters in the darkened alcoves of the Escorial, her rapid-fire Spanish a stark contrast to the slow, ponderous ceremony of the court, but she was playing a game whose rules were stacked against her. Her health, always delicate, began to fail under the immense strain. A persistent cough racked her body. She suffered 2 miscarriages, each one a devastating blow to her primary duty and a source of cruel gossip among her enemies. The court whispered that the nervous, politically agitated princess was too hot-blooded to carry a Spanish heir. It was during this period of weakness that Queen Maria Louisa struck a decisive blow. A packet of Maria Antonia's secret, uncensored letters to her mother, letters filled with scathing, brilliant, and deeply insulting assessments of the Spanish king, queen, and Godoy, was intercepted. Whether it was through betrayal by a servant or the work of Godoy's spies, the result was the same. The queen now held in her hands irrefutable proof of her daughter-in-law's treasonous contempt. There was no public confrontation. Instead, the queen's smile became a little colder, her embrace a little tighter. The psychological warfare intensified. Ferdinand was shown the letters, proof that his wife held him in little higher esteem than his parents. His fragile ego shattered. He turned on Maria Antonia completely, accusing her of ruining him. The alliance was broken. The princess was now utterly alone, a brilliant flame sputtering in a suffocating, hostile darkness. The last breath of fire in the spring of 1806, Maria Antonia's cough worsened dramatically. The royal physicians diagnosed her with tuberculosis, a common and often fatal disease. But as she wasted away in her chambers, isolated and abandoned by the husband she had tried to empower, a more sinister diagnosis began to circulate in the hushed corridors of the palace. Her decline was shockingly rapid. Her ladies-in-waiting, now all spies for the queen, reported every detail of her suffering. Her mother, the Queen of Naples, frantic with worry, dispatched her own personal physician to Madrid, but he was delayed and obstructed at every turn by Godoy's bureaucracy. In her final lucid moments, Maria Antonia knew she was defeated. She had flown into the heart of the Spanish court like a hawk, intending to seize control, but she had been caught in a spider's web of intrigue, far older and more patient than she. Her gambit had failed. She had not forged a king. She had only sharpened the paranoia of a weakling and drawn the fatal attention of his keepers. On May 21, 1806, at the royal palace of Aranjuez, Princess Maria Antonia of Naples and Sicily, heir to the Spanish throne, died. She was 21 years old. The official cause was tuberculosis. But almost immediately, rumors of a different, darker cause began to spread like wildfire. Poison. The word was whispered in every corner of Madrid. Had the queen, her hated mother-in-law, finally silenced the Neapolitan flame? Had Godoy, the master of the court, eliminated the one person who could truly threaten him? No proof was ever found. An autopsy was either not performed or its results suppressed. But the suspicion was so strong, so plausible, that it became its own truth. Maria Antonia's mother, the fierce Queen Maria Carolina, was utterly convinced her daughter had been murdered. She swore a lifelong burning hatred for the Spanish court and for Napoleon Bonaparte, whom she blamed for propping up Godoy's regime. The death of the princess was not just a family tragedy. It was an international incident, a dark stain on the honor of the House of Bourbon. The haunting of a future King Ferdinand, the widower prince, showed little public grief. He was already in negotiations to marry a relative of Napoleon, a move his late wife would have seen as the ultimate betrayal. He had learned his lesson not in kingship, but in survival. He retreated into himself, his resentment now mixed with a deep-seated paranoia. His first taste of political intrigue had ended in the death of his mentor and wife. It taught him to trust no one, to see conspiracy everywhere, and to value loyalty only as a temporary tool. But the ghost of Maria Antonia never left him. Her death became the foundational myth for his supporters. The Partido Fernandista, which she had created, now saw her as a martyr, the first victim of the monstrous trinity of Charles, Maria Luisa, and Godoy. Her murder, for in their minds it was undoubtedly a murder, became the rallying cry that would fuel the tumult of Aranjuez 2 years later, finally bringing Ferdinand the crown she had wanted for him. He would go on to have 3 more wives, each one a chapter in his cruel and disastrous reign. He would become the desired and then the Felon King. He would betray everyone who ever fought for him. Yet, the ghost of that first, fiery Neapolitan princess would linger. She was the first to see the potential for power in him, but also the first to be consumed by his weakness. In trying to give him a spine, she had shown him the utility of the dagger. He learned her lessons in conspiracy all too well, but missed her lessons in courage and principle entirely. The flame she lit did not illuminate a path to greatness for him. It merely cast a long dark shadow that would follow him to his own dishonored grave. The forgotten queen's gambit had failed, and in its failure, she had unwittingly helped create the monster Spain would endure for a lifetime.